You're listening to Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran Podcast.
Now introducing your host of Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran, the one-man show, Brian Roof.
Hey, what's going on, friends and fam? Thank you guys so much for joining another great day on another great interview. We are here on interview 87. Vastly approaching 100. That is absolutely crazy. We'll try to make it interesting on the 100th one. I don't know what we're gonna do. We'll think about something. But I just want to say thank you to everybody out there for continuously supporting the show, watching it. It helps get all these people's stories out there. Some of them got nonprofits. Some of them are musicians. Some of them just out there trying to make a way in the world. But you guys are out there supporting it, and listening to the stories. I see a lot of you guys out there liking their pages and stuff like that as well. I appreciate you guys so much. I also would like to do a quick shout out to podcastguest.com. Thank you guys so much for thinking about me and adding me to your network and providing me with some great guests. And as a matter of fact, that's how I found my next guest. And my next guest is a United States Marine veteran. Spent 10.5 years in the Marines and was an air traffic controller. Just recently actually got out in October of 2021, and he's wanting to be a mindset coach, and we're going to hear all about his stories and what he's got going. And here to talk about it is Matt Findora. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Brian. I'm excited to be on here. I get to talk about Marine stuff, but that doesn't always get to happen. So
yeah, man. I mean, if all we're missing is some box crayons to chew on, and I always got mine at least present, but but no, man, I'm excited to have you on. I'm always excited to hear about my brothers and sisters who have served their country, and hear about their experiences while they're in and what they got going on now. So let's go hear all about your story, where you grew up, what made you decide to join the Marine Corps, and kind of lead us down your path.
So I grew up just about 20 minutes south of Cleveland, Ohio. Being a Marine was never on my list of things to do. What ended up happening, which is funny because I share the story all the time because I feel like this story really defined me and where I was at in my life, was my senior year of high school. I grew up poor. I grew up in this negative atmosphere. And so my older brother had to pay for me to take my ACT. We got the times wrong. I showed up late. I couldn't take my ACT, so I had no idea what I was going to do. About a week after that, somebody approached me and saw I was wearing this Marine's backpack or this Marine's bag. And he's like, "Hey, man, have you ever considered joining?" I'm like, "No, I just got this bag for free in the mail. Like, I don't want to carry my books around everywhere." He's like, "Well, hey, we're going to go work out today. We'll come pick you up and everything if you want to come, work out with us." And I thought about it for a minute. I was like, you know what? I have this gym in my apartment. I don't know how to use any of the equipment. So yeah, let's do it. Sure. So I went home, ate a snack like I do every part of the day. They came pick me up. We drove past the gym to the park. This was at the height of P90X. And so we were doing a P90X circuit course in the park. And so this is basically the first workout of my life. I didn't do sports or anything like that. This is the first workout of my life.
And P90X is pretty tough. I remember that workout, man. They even went with even a harder one than that, but yeah.
Yeah. And so we're getting near the end of it. It's the very final exercise, and it's ammo can lifts. I can actually say the exercise because Marines, we know that. So ammo can lifts is the very last exercise here. And so right before we hit that timer to go, I throw up all the food I just ate. And so the person who was leading this exercise was somebody who had recently graduated from boot camp. He's like, "It's okay, take it easy, no big deal. Like, you're tired, you just throw up," and like, not a problem, right? But the guy inviting me was in the same group. He's like, "What are you doing? Push yourself, man. Like, let's go." And so in this moment, I had to decide: do I listen to this guy who absolutely makes sense? He's credible, right? He's a Marine. He's saying like, you feel tired and weak, like I did, or do I listen to the guy who invited me? And so he's like, I'm like, you know what? I came here with a purpose. So let me do this. And so I decided I was going to push through it. I didn't do a lot and probably did like maybe 10, maybe 20 in the 2 minutes we were supposed to do because I just felt so weak, right? But it was such a shining moment for me because it showed that I'm much more capable than what anybody else tells me that I am. I could have listened to this guy who said don't do anything, right? And so uh at that point, what ended up happening was it kind of highlighted for me this mindset that I grew up with. If I would have listened to what my family put together for me, I probably would never have joined the Marines. My mom was actually very against me joining the Marines. My dad was all for it. He was all gung ho, but my mom had bad things that happened to her because of Marines, so she was very against it. But you know what? I just decided this is my path forward. This is what I have to do, and so it opened up a lot of doors for me. Just being able to join. I decided that day that was the day I was going to join the Marine Corps, and um,
All right, we're back. We had a quick little technical difficulties. All right, go ahead, finish your story.
So when I was thinking about going to college, like my goal was I wanted to be an engineer, civil engineering preferably. So that was the MOS that I was going to go get. Um, that was I did all the everything I needed to do. 2 weeks before I'm supposed to go to boot camp, they say, "Oh, hey, by the way, you have to have a driver's license. You have to get it in 2 weeks." And I was like, "I can't do that. That's impossible." They're like, "Okay, well, we need to change your job like right now." Like, well, you're a smart dude, so you know what? We're just gonna put you in this aviation operations job, and you get to go work on planes. And so that way, if and when you decide to get out, you have a civilian job that works for you. I was like, cool, let's do it. Um, what ended up happening was I didn't work on planes. I actually was telling pilots what to do, and so that ended up being my job instead. Because I guess it's under the same function of like you could be either the one who works on the
It's like
planes
an
or
umbrella type thing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I ended up doing air traffic control, and that ended up did
Nice.
that for the entire time, the 10.5 years.
Wow. So now let's talk more. You went, what did you go? Pensacola for training and all that?
Yep.
Florida? Yeah. Nice. So um when you ended up getting into that schooling, what was your thoughts? Like, oh shit, like I'm gonna be an air traffic controller. And what type of air vehicles did they have you guys doing? Because I know, in the Marine Corps there's not a lot. I mean, there's the hell, what is there? You tell us what there was out there for you to air traffic control.
So honestly, I went into the job and I had I didn't even know what air traffic control was. And like, oh, cool, you're air traffic control. Cool, what's that? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went to Pensacola. It's like I think it's 12 to 16 week that you have to go through, and you have basically a test every week. And if you fail 3 tests, you're kicked out and you gotta go get a new job.
Oh
So
shit. Yeah. They're like, yeah.
yeah, so we started off with just like 6 weeks of just book work. Probably had like 6 or 7 tests within that. Then we did like 3 weeks of tower work, 4 weeks of radar work, and then a week of deployment stuff, what you would do as an air traffic controller in a deployed environment. And then you get to move on to your next place. And for me, they gave you this list. They said, okay, here are your
The
choices. East
wish
Coast,
list.
yeah, East
Yeah.
Coast, West Coast, or overseas.
Yeah.
1, 2, and
Sounds
3.
about right. Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? And they're like, oh, they never give you your first. They never give you your first. I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'll put overseas first because that'd be pretty cool. If I don't get it, no hard feelings. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe East Coast because I'm from the East Coast and the West Coast third. And the day came when they're going to give you your orders, and the guy was just so happy to hand me. He's like, "You're going to Japan," and I was just like, "Oh, it's pretty cool, awesome." And
Yeah.
the guy,
He
"Wait,
probably
you're
wasn't
excited
expecting,
for
like,
this?"
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
he's
like,
like, "Hmm."
yeah, like who in their right mind is like, I'm going to go live in Japan for a couple years. Only the military is really that opportunity is going to come up. So I was like, man, sounds like a great opportunity. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, the first duty station I had was Iwakuni, Japan, and
Nice.
that's where I started, being an air traffic controller. Um,
Did you do 1 year over there, or did you do longer than a year?
so I did 2 years
Oh, 2 years?
in Iwakuni, Japan. Then I was trying to extend. They ended up giving me orders somewhere else while I was trying to do that. So I ended up going to Fort Worth, Texas for 5 years, where basically I did air traffic for 1 year out of those 5 years.
Yeah, now over there, were you messing with the JSF and all that stuff, or the Joint
Uh,
Strike Fighter?
so that was so at Fort Worth is NASGRB, so Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base. So that is where all the reserve air traffic controllers go. And so I was the active duty component teaching them how to be essentially teaching them to be Marines when they come in for their weekends and doing all the basic Marine Corps stuff. So for me, it was more of an organizational opportunity to learn more about, hey, how does the Marine Corps function as a whole, learning the admin side, the training side, and all these other different sides that have to get done too. Did that for 5 years, and then ended up going back to Japan because I wanted to. They gave me that opportunity, so I went back to Japan for another 3 years before I got out.
So, how did your ranks work out throughout the years? What rank did you end up with?
I ended as a staff sergeant.
Stats aren't, yeah,
Mhm.
nice. Never got yourself in any trouble.
I never got caught, so
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the dumb Marines and there's the ones that didn't get caught.
yeah.
Uh, no, that's cool, man. Now, did you have a lot of fun while you were out in Japan? I always hear the crazy stories, and did you stay mainly on base or did you get to go out and check out Japan?
So the first 2 years, they had, like, the strict liberty policy. I was only, and I was single at the time. So if I wanted to go do anything, I'd basically have to go convince somebody else to go out with me and do the things that I wanted to do. And a lot of air traffic controllers at that time just wanted to stay inside and play video games all day. So the first time I was there, I didn't necessarily get to do a lot. The second time I was out there, I was married with 2 kids, and my wife's like, "We're gonna go do stuff. We're gonna go try this, this, and this." I'm like, "Okay." And she would just say, "Hey, I wanna go here." I'm like, all right, like, we'll go do this and do that." And so the second time I definitely got to explore a lot more, and I'm thankful for that. Unfortunately, it was also during COVID, so there were a
Mm.
lot of restrictions at that time too, so we didn't get to go to some of our favorite places that we wanted to. But the it's funny because I've been thinking about it for like 3 weeks now of like, "Man, I should just go back. Like, just go back to Japan, go work as a DoD controller out there." But, wherever the life takes me, I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing, but there's so many great memories and things that I wish we could have done when we were out there.
Yeah, and I'm sure you got comfortable a little bit out there for a while. You got to be out there for a while. So, you know, um, you kind of were in, I guess, or getting out around a unique time is in the whole COVID thing, right? I know
Mhm.
um the Marine Corps probably changed quite a bit around the COVID time. Kind of run us through that a little bit because I haven't really got to hear too much of people's experiences and how what the Marine Corps, how they treated things. I mean, did they stop you guys from going to work at times, or they just were strict about everything?
It's interesting because as an air traffic controller, the planes don't stop flying. You still have to, so you can't really just, there's no telework for us. Like, you have to go to work. And so we just kind of got weird hours to try to minimize our contact with other people. Um, we were the base itself was very limited. Like in Japan, like, you could only go certain places, and it was set by the country, not necessarily us. And it was based off of how many cases were in each prefecture, which is basically a state. Like, each state has, like, oh, if we have this many cases, you can't go to this place. Or if this major city has X amount of cases, you can't go until it gets better. And so throughout the time frame, like, every couple of weeks, you get a new map saying, hey, the weekends here, these are the places you can go, these are the places you can't go. And I feel like because we were in Japan, we didn't feel the full brunt that the US got, which I'm pretty, happy to say that. It was not as bad. We weren't all fighting each other for toilet paper like I heard everybody here in the US was. Like, it was
Yeah, there's
available.
definitely some of that, right?
Um
Just people start slinging the damn freaking toilet paper.
yeah. And so on base, you have to wear a mask everywhere you go essentially. At our work, we were fortunate. we were safe enough, smart enough not to get ourselves involved or close to anybody who was sick. So we considered it a safety hazard to put on a face mask because while on position controlling, because if a pilot can't hear you and you have something that has to get done right then, and they can't hear you because you're muffled with
Your
the
mumble,
mask
yeah.
on, right? Like that's a safety hazard. So when we're actually in the workplace on position working, we didn't have to wear a face mask. But essentially, any other time, face masks everywhere.
Wow. So about how long did they, I mean, that last until you got out? Because you got out in 2021, right?
Yeah, that lasted
So
until I got out.
all the way through, huh?
Yep.
Wow. Did you end up having to go back to the States to check out before you got out? Were
Yep.
they send you back to the East Coast to do that, or
They sent me to Pendleton for 2 weeks.
oh, well, that's odd. They're like, oh, you live on the East Coast, do you? We're gonna send you over to the West Coast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just the way that they did it.
So now, when you went to Camp Pendleton for the 2 weeks, was that kind of they're like, well, what are you doing here, type shit, and you're just like, I'm here to check it out, like, or did they put you to work
Well, so they have like almost like a platoon of people that are getting out and all have to get
uh,
processed at Pendleton. So I was like
like a
one.
separations platoon?
Yeah. So I was like
Yeah.
one of like 10 people, and since of my because of my rank, I didn't really have to do everything else that everybody else had to do. So I kind of just could do what I wanted at that point. Just had to show up at certain times to get my paperwork done, which took like 10-30 minutes.
So you said 10 and a half years now. That's odd because usually there's 4 year increments. Did you end up getting out early
Yes. Well, yes
because of
and no.
job or just
An aviation contract has to be 5 years, and so
right? That's
I
right.
had the so my first one was 5 years, but then the extension ends up when you reenlist, it's a 4-year contract after that.
Hmm.
Because I was going from Texas to overseas, I had to have a 3-year contract. I had to have 3 years on contract in order to fulfill that. So they just extended the contract for a year and a half. That
I
way,
got you.
that's
Yeah.
so I ended up getting that 10 and a half.
Ah, nice. So I mean, now, did you ever have any crazy type of things happen while you were being an air traffic controller, or was it always pretty, pretty routine?
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty routine. I think the craziest stuff was just seeing the things a reservist would do, and you'd be like, "Wow!" And the fact that they could get away with a lot more too, and you're like, "Really?
Sure.
Like you could just
Right.
do this and it's okay?" Like, wow, that's kind of weird, but okay. That's probably the craziest that we had.
Yeah, that's kind of funny that you say that because it always happened to us in our world too. Like they would just give us these, reservists because they're there, they got to do their time, and they just come in real quick and they're just all we all operate a certain way on active duty, right? And it's
Mhm.
very regiment. Some of these these reservist guys, they come in, man, and they finally got to shave, and they got to act like a marine, for like the 2 weeks, and it just the some of the stuff like you said that they'll do, man. You just see these guys getting in trouble, locked up, by the platoon sergeant, because these guys are like forgetting shit, and just because they may practice it somewhere doesn't necessarily mean the platoon may be operating it differently, in expectations. It's just it's funny that it's kind of one of those things. But I God bless the reservists though. I mean, they become activated like a mofo when war starts. I mean, I've seen those guys stay in long periods of time. Why a lot of active guys were getting rotated back home.
Yeah.
Now, did you end up having to deploy over to the Middle East and all that stuff during any of your time, or was it already at that time? I mean,
Yeah,
because you
most
you joined it what 2011, so I mean, I gotta say, yeah, obviously, shit was still popping off a little bit there, but I mean, it wasn't as active.
Yeah, no, we for me and in my job, it was essentially just the exercises that we would go do just to prepare for things that could happen. I think one of the interesting things about the Marine Corps' deployment aspect of my job, which I don't think everybody knows a lot about that. So, in a deployed environment, what our job is we have to go set up a runway. So if we were to go get deployed in, let's say, in the Middle East somewhere, we have to create a runway so these people can land on it. And so we have to be ready. It's a 6-person team that sets up this runway. We have 20,
Wow.
the goal is to set it up completely in 28 minutes, and we have to be viable
Wow.
for
28 minutes.
yeah, and we have to be
Shit.
viable for 72 hours. And then that's when like the more intense like stability things come in there. It's like, hey, we're gonna make this a permanent airfield for us. So now we have to set up the rest of the stuff there.
Now, what's the most intense situation they ever had you guys kind of set up for? Dirt. I mean, just straight up. I mean, because even the Middle East, y- depending on what terrain you were at, it's soft as hell sand there. I mean, and the sandstorms are real.
Yeah.
The elements over there are amazingly crazy. Now, do they get you guys set it up for the absolute craziest conditions? Because I mean, there's blizzards, but I mean, I know that it's like less likely for that to happen. But I mean, do they guys? I mean, set you guys up for all situations?
So usually, the person in charge of the team ends up having to do research, and they find like what's the best spot to actually go in, where we can do the most landings and the most takeoffs. And so we kind of we do survey work to go see, okay, what kind of soil do we have here? Okay, how many, if this is based off of how deep things go and the type of soil that we have, how many landings and takeoffs can we do at this specific spot? And so we kind of have to do our research based off of these surveys that we do. And then we look for obstructions. Where are there trees? If they were to land here, what would they hit? Things of that nature. Create like a drawing, and then give that to the commanding officer, and they ultimately make the decision. Okay, this is where we're going.
Now, what's the biggest size aircraft? I mean, do you guys set up? Can you guys set up for like a C-130 type deal, or is it
That
more helicopters, or is it as big as the C-130s?
it's primarily for the C-130s.
Wow,
So it's a 3,000-foot runway that we set up.
wow. Now, when you guys set that up, you guys got to compact. Is it like just making sure you have good surface, or is the C-130 relatively durable for that kind of terrain?
Kind of 50-50. So we want to make sure that it's something that's durable. And then we just set up essentially panels on sandbags so they can actually see where they're landing. And we're saying, hey, shoot for this goal. Here's the end. Here's the front, and you just have to land in between there and stop.
Nice. Now, do you guys use like engineers and stuff, or is it primarily this is all air winger type guys that are out there doing these type jobs?
So it's all air wing guys. So we have 4 air traffic controllers, and then we have one, and then we have 2 maintenance techs. So we have one that focuses on the communications, and we have another one that focuses on the nav aid that we bring out there. So we have this a mobile TACAN, which is essentially, if you think about what a TACAN is, it's essentially a lighthouse for aircraft. So it just says,
Mm,
"Hey, this is the landing spot. Come look over here." Bam, then you can find it. And
like
so
almost a
we set
beacon.
up yeah. So we set up the runway. We have one guy. We all start off. Everybody's in alignment, and we are essentially aligning this with all the stuff that we have. One guy runs the entire length of the runway. So one person stays at the front. The next guy is going to go 3,000 feet. And we're measuring him with the first guy. So every
Hmm.
500 feet, we're putting new sandbags down, putting a new panel. So every 500 feet, it's known how far, and we align it the best we can on one side.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, have you ever had to go do like a live, do set up a live one, or have you? Is it always been training for you?
Essentially training. So I went to WTI, Weapons and Tactic Instruction in Yuma, Arizona. So that's where you can
Okay.
become an instructor there. And so I ended up becoming an instructor for that. And so we did a lot. It's about what, 6 weeks, 4 or 6 weeks. And we just do all the different types of exercises set up as if we were going out in the thing. And I was honestly, it was probably one of the best times I've had in the Marine Corps. It was just going there with a bunch of guys, with like, it was 6 of us really, that were all learning the same thing at the same time. And we had some of the best chemistry, some of the best camaraderie. We always hung out after work when to like do whatever. Like, we were just a really good group of guys to be with.
Yeah, I mean, you guys ended up having to be kind of a team, I'm sure, during a lot of the training, right? And
Mhm.
like you said, had to rely and work with each other. That's one thing that's you can say is great about the Marine Corps, and I think a lot of guys and gals end up missing is how close you get to one another, especially when you end up kind of going through the suck together, right? I
Mhm.
mean, whatever suck that may be, whether you're going on these gosh damn 30-mile humps, and or you're digging a foxhole, or you're setting up, a freaking whole runway for a C-130. I mean, there's just so many different things that the Marine Corps has a way of doing a lot of great things, and I think that they even know how to bring people from all walks of life, kind of leave that shit at the door and understand that you have a mission in front of you and it's all about that mission.
Mhm.
I kind of wish our world could kind of mimic a little bit how the Marine Corps works, right?
Mhm.
And focus more on the mission than each other. That's I think a big thing. I think we focus too much on each other than on what should be our missions and our real focuses. You know,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you ended up really loving it. You after you ended up getting out of the Marine Corps. Now, did you end up going back into air traffic controlling and stay in that kind of line of work, or what did you end up doing when you got out?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'd love to share my story on why I got out too, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
absolutely. Yeah, go for it, man.
So, yeah, 'cause, honestly, it was probably one of the toughest decisions I've had to make, and one of the hardest things I've had to go through was getting out because I
So you
never
didn't ever
had.
want to get out, really? You were going to you planned on making a career out of it?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna do the full 20 years. That was my goal. That my wife knew that was the goal, but, I was at a position where I was at where I didn't feel valued, I didn't feel respected, and as a staff sergeant, like, you're in this leadership role, and I felt like I didn't have that role, that respect, and the capability of just continuing on when there are people who are your bosses don't have that same respect for you that you're supposed to have for them, and it showed to the point where, they were undermining my authority, like, "Hey, I'm doing this," and they were just it was almost like, "Hey, I'm gonna make your life miserable because I can."
Mm,
And so I had to make the decision to get out and decide because I wasn't getting out of the Marine Corps what I wanted to get out, and I didn't think I was going to be continue to be my best version of myself in the Marine Corps. So I felt like it was essentially a mutual parting at that point. And so it was really difficult to get out because that was everything I'd planned for was right there for the next 10 years. And when I got out, my son when all this happened, my son was just born. So that was
mm.
that was my third my final, and I made that decision while my wife was still in that postpartum
Right,
era.
right,
So
yeah.
it was like within a month, and so we had to figure everything out. And my
Everything seemed to just kinda be boom, right at that one moment, huh? I mean, you
yeah,
could see the walls are caving in at this point.
yeah. So that was my son was born May of 2021. My contract was up in October of 2021, and we were living in Japan. And so we had to figure out real quick, okay, what are we gonna do now? And so I had nobody to help me out when it came to where are we gonna live. We
Yeah,
had no car, no job lined up because we weren't prepared for that.
and you guys been in Japan this whole time, right?
Yeah. So we had to make the tough decision. So my wife is Filipino, and so she ended up taking the kids to live in the Philippines until I got a permanent job, essentially. And so
Wow.
when I went to Pendleton, I was by myself. Then I went to back home to Ohio, and the it's funny where I didn't nobody had a place for me to stay. My family didn't. But my older brother helped me by allowing me to stay with his wife's parents. So I stayed with my brother's in-laws' parents until I got a job. So I got a job about 30 days after that. So it's technically so the day after I got out, I signed a job. Like I already had my next job lined up, which I was fortunate for. And so I did
Absolutely.
started with a contract tower in Harlingen, Texas. So that's right at the border of the Mexican border, like 5 minutes from the border down there. Before, and the goal was whenever I got picked up by the FAA. that's when my wife and kids would come back. And so I started there October. I didn't get picked up and moved to Fort Wayne until June of 2022.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I missed 10 months away from my wife and kids, and that was by far one of the hardest times because you're lonely. You don't, your
Dude,
family's not there. You don't have an
dude,
identity.
you're just getting out. I mean, your mental health was probably really at a low right there. I mean, and you were really going through it because getting out after 10 and a half years, you've had security.
Yeah.
You didn't leave really on your own terms either, right? That
Hmm.
you had a passion, had you had better leadership, which I think that's a common thing, unfortunately, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of retention problems due to the fact of leaders that make it where people want to get out, right? Unfortunate.
Hmm.
And that's the reason why they need to somehow get a hold of that before the retention problem becomes even worse. I mean, no one's going to ever want to re-enlist if they feel like they're trash all the time. When they can get more respect in the civilian world, uh, minimum wage now is $21 an hour, right? I mean, so it's appealing to probably some.
Hmm.
But dude, I gotta imagine what did you do for yourself to kind of keep yourself from like hitting that rock bottom, man? Because I know here you are out of the Marine Corps, 10 and a half years, away from your kids, your wife, that strains the marriage too. I mean, no matter what, bro,
Hmm.
distance is a rough thing. It's going to create havoc. How did you manage to kind of get through those waters, man?
I don't think I did it very well. I think I just kind of, put a
Yeah.
face on, and I just tried to find ways to be productive, or like, okay, well, hey, the goal is them to come back. All right, how do I do that? Like, I just need to focus on that. If I keep my eyes on the prize of being back with my family, I'll make it through. That's when I kind of started working with a coach and be trying to become a mindset coach. That's when I really started. I'm like, you know what? I've had this passion for so long. I'm going to start, and let's just do it. And I think it didn't go well because I wasn't in that right mind space, because I didn't, I wanted to be ready. I want to say, you know what, you're never ready. You just got to do it. But I really wasn't ready. And
Right.
so I kind of paid the price financially for that. And it's because you have to do the work yourself and recognize where you're at, and I hadn't done that. I was just putting this front and this facade up and just trying to focus on being productive instead of acknowledging the things that I was going through.
Yeah. And that's mindset is a big thing, right? And um, I know this for myself. Having clear mindset, it helps you have a clear path, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
makes things easier. Everything doesn't seem like it's a travesty when it happens.
Mhm.
You can process things a little bit easier, and I think that's where a lot of us all struggle with is getting to that level. Because a lot of us have a lot of things that we have had in our past, even up to some kid. People have childhood traumas that they never dealt with. Then they go and they do other things, they see things, and then boom, next thing you know, you're hitting your 30s and you're close to your 40s, and all these things start falling in on you, and you're like, what the hell? Because you never took time to process it,
Mhm.
and I think it's hard at a young age to kind of recognize those things. What age? So when you got out, so you're kind of still, I mean, you're only about 3 years out, man. So you still obviously have definitely probably gone through different experiences as a veteran, right? Because I think a
Mhm.
lot of us when we get out, we're disconnected because we get when you get out of the Marine Corps, they don't have no more use for you,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, you're gone. Well, boy,
Yeah.
on to the next. Now we got to focus on this staff sergeant over here because staff sergeant's Findora, he's out. He wants to go be a nasty civilian. But I mean, I guess at least you had something to think about. Like, hopefully this is temporary. The faster I get myself in the job, the faster my family makes it back home.
Mhm.
How's life been for you guys, since you guys been adjusted and, they're back home and everything? Is everything a lot easier now? Or has it been an
Uh,
adjustment as well? You
it's
know?
I'd say it's been an adjustment because when you're gone, when you're separated for so long, it takes at least equally amount of time to get back to, where you were beforehand. And so that's kind of how it started off. Hey, here's all these new things. We got 3 kids. We got to put them in school now, and we're trying to figure out. This is our first house that we have together. This is the first house I've ever lived in, and so we're going through all these changes. It's like, okay, and then on top of that, while I'm doing, my 9 to 5, my air traffic control, my head is still not in the game because I want to pursue the mindset coaching, and at the same time, a part of me wants to make up for essentially the mistake that I made of paying for something when I wasn't ready. And so dealing with almost all of that and constantly being reminded of that decision that I made took a lot of working through. It took a lot of work to get through that and recognize, hey, it's a decision. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. It happened, and you can't live in the past. You can't guilt yourself and shame yourself for that decision. You made a decision. You have to move forward. And it's not just you, but it's also the family has to move forward too. Because while I can handle my own emotions at some point, I can't handle my wife's. I can't tell her how to feel or anything like that. So when she gets the moments of remembering that decision that we made, we got to sit with it again. And so it's a constant thing until everything, when you truly feel like that decision was worth it. And unfortunately, I know we're not necessarily at that point where we really feel the relief of getting out per se.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes time, right? I mean, to kind of get established, especially when you've been apart from each other, right? Because I imagine even for your kids, they've been around mom this whole time. Moms are a little bit more chill, than dads are, right? And where we well, at least I know there is some cases where there's some moms out there with a pop, but a lot of times it's the pops, and we, especially Marines, so then they're like, oh no, you know, we used to be able to do this. Now dad's making us do this. I mean, I imagine that stuff was even hard at first too, kind of bringing even the kids back and trying to get that whole cohesion of being a family again. Cause I mean, dude, time away, even for yourself, right? You probably were used to quiet house, and now it's pure chaos and you're here, you're reffing and, hey, stop. Air traffic controlling in a different way, bro. You're just over here, you know,
Yeah.
directing traffic in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, but nah, yeah, I gotta imagine it's hard. So, what ended up leading you to want to be, a mindset coach and all that? Like, I mean, what ultimately, you know, bing, all of a sudden that light just came on. You're like, man, this is what I want to do.
So it kind of goes back to, it was like there were a lot of different things that kind of led up to it, and it's kind of started off with that original story of why I joined the Marine Corps, when I was able to recognize my own mindset and where I was at. So after that, I kind of continued with that motivational aspect of things. Now I'm in the Marines, everybody's motivated. Like, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start off with putting motivational quotes on Facebook. And I actually had someone message me and be like, hey, you know what? Your motivational quotes helped me run a mile and a half without stopping. Thank you for that. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't know I had that type of impact, by just putting a quote. And I had somebody in person say the same thing. Somebody that I worked with, somebody that was actually my superior, said that, like, hey man, you helped me get through this. Your quotes helped me get through the day. And I was like, wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So just started off with quotes. 2016, I decided, I'm just gonna try this blogging thing. What is blogging? I used to write as a kid, so just kind of wrote about my experiences and continued with that. Then a couple years later, 2018, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to be more serious. Like, I don't want this to just be, a thing that I do occasionally. Like, so I started really learning the ins and outs of what blogging was. Did that for a couple years, tried to upgrade the website, and then had a technical error and basically lost everything I had done for those past couple years. In 2019, what really hit me in 2019 was I saw this documentary on Netflix called "I'm Not Your Guru" by Tony Robbins, and I learned what a life coach really was. And I was like, that is the type of impact that I've been striving to have on people. Like that is such a powerful thing to sit there and sit with somebody and help them through one of the most difficult things that they can go through. Like that's what I want to do. I want to help people in that way. And so once I got out, that's when I got a coach, and what he helped me. The one thing he did help me with was recognizing everything that I had been writing about was mindset. How do you change your mindset? Like these are the things I went through. These are the things that suck, but you got to get through it anyway. And then this is just how you reframe the things that are happening to you so you can actually continue moving forward. And so that's kind of when I realized a mindset coach was where my space was going to be, where my niche was going to be. And then because I went through it at, when I first started, it was, 18 is when I really found that moment, that aha moment. I was like, you know what? How many other young men feel the same exact way, or going through something, you know, as an adult, as I'm like really learning more about myself, what I realized was the things that I was going through. I used to say I had a bad childhood. And what I realized was abuse. There was a lot of abuse that happened in my family that I didn't realize until I was an adult. And you look back and you're like, oh man, like I
That
can't
wasn't
believe
healthy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And part of it is like, I can't believe I'm still here after dealing with all of that. Not everybody gets to make it through, and I'm here still strong and working through it all. So I want to find a way to give back to the point where people don't have to deal with what I dealt with. And so how many groups do we have out there for young men or men in general?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
it's the underserved community right now. Like we don't have
Sure.
programs. We have programs for women, a
Because
lot
you're
for
supposed to be
women.
really tough at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're taught you could be angry, you can be happy, you're not allowed to be sad, you're not allowed to be afraid. And
Yeah.
so our mindset just gets hardened to that point, which is why Marines are the way they are. They're always angry but they get the job done.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to find a way to give back and help people work through what I've had to work through. And I just feel at the end of the day that's my calling and that's what I'm meant to do.
That's amazing. So we'll go ahead and pull up your website here and kind of, talk a little bit about it and you know, see what we can do to get people to kind of check you out, man.
Mhm.
So yeah, run us kind of through what you got going on here.
Um, so that's I went through a lot of different names before I finally came up with what I truly wanted to focus on, which was, first off, everything we do is a choice. Like we could stay and live in the past, we can live in the future, but at the end of the day, it's our choice of what we do. Life is happening for us, not to us. And so I wanted to focus on, choose is probably the most important word out of all of that. But what is it that I really want is, choose to live your life, choose to love each other and yourself, of course, and grow. Like how do we continue to grow? And so that's why I decided, help them. And then what leadership and experience that I learned from the Marine Corps that I can add into this to help people be successful. I saw a lot of amazing and successful people come through. Like, how did they do it? And then on top of that, how do we, be more emotionally mature? How do we work through that aspect as well and just live a life worth living?
That's great. Yeah, I think like you said, man, young men and stuff, even men, it's something that I think we're starting to touch on a lot more than we ever used to, but it was always, probably into the late 2000s before they started even recognizing mental health. And then then we started saying men's mental health at some point in time. Wait, what do you mean? Men have mental health problems? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And the ironic thing about that is this is the month of this is men's mental health awareness month too.
Right. No, and I mean, just gets overshadowed by other, whatever else it is this month too. They always throw in extra things. Unfortunately, it takes away from the men's mental health sometimes, right? And it's again being overshadowed by other things. So
Mhm.
it's good that we have more people out there, men out there, trying to reach out to each other and say, hey, come on, man, let's get together. Let's let's be the best versions of ourselves, right? And I mean, I think the world deserves that. And
Yeah.
sometimes to get there, to be the best versions of ourselves, we got to work through some things, right? That maybe kind of hanging us up from and preventing us from getting to where we want to be. Because like having that mindset, man, it's one of those things, and it's hard when you're younger because your focus is on so many different things, being macho, getting a job so you can have be uh society can accept you because you're out there being the breadwinner, and all the things that the culture has basically painted the picture for every young man or male going through it, right? So they always think
Mhm.
I got to do this or I got to be this, and if I'm not, well, and then I'm a piece of shit,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden they get in their head and they start calling themselves pieces of crap or feeling like they're pieces of crap, and they emulate that, right? And so they're
Yep.
not allowing themselves to be the best versions of themselves because they're being negative all the time,
Yeah.
right? And it's the pressures, I think, sometimes that society puts on us, you
Mhm.
know, and we feel
Uh,
like we got to live up to this standard
yeah. I
or
think
this label.
one of my favorite quotes is from Brene Brown when I think about this, and she said that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And if we really and like I really think about that like a lot, like, man, like if you think about that, right? Being your most authentic self is the opposite of I'm just gonna sit here and be with somebody else because I want to be liked, I want to be perceived this way. So I'm just gonna fit it and do what it is they want. But when you actually belong to a group, to an organization, whatever that is, when you're truly yourself, that is what belonging is. And that is one of the most wholesome feelings you're ever gonna get because loneliness is the like number one killer of men's mental health. Like when it comes to suicide, is loneliness. And so when
Right.
you find that group that you can be yourself with, that's one of the most powerful things you're ever going to get in your life.
It's very liberating, right? Because
Yeah.
I think in general, when you can get to a level of not really caring about what others think about you, not what I think for myself, that I can say this for me, I spent a lot of my time living for other people in my younger days, right? And I didn't spend enough time on myself. So I was spending too much time worrying about others and being friends or accepted or being cool, or uh, all those stupid little things that I think that hung me up and prevented me from actually being the best version of myself at a younger age. I could have probably, I've always, I've always set myself up for success, but I think it took me a little bit longer to get there. Had I had more of that solid foundation, right? And I had a clear mindset and I was more on a clear path because when you're all jacked up in the head, bro, like you will do dumb things.
Yeah.
You will make some badass decisions and you will make some regretful things happen. You know, um, the less damage you can occur during that time and you can somehow find, a coach or a mentor or a group or a nonprofit or just any kind of like-minded folks to kind of help say, hey, dude, listen, we've been there, we've done that. Here's a cushion so you don't got to fall as hard or as far down as all some of us had to.
Hmm.
And I think the more that we can provide, you know uh coaches out there, and things like that, it's going to help because we're starting to get to a level in society where people want others to do things for them, right? We're lacking leaders and stuff like that. So we need to still want to breed leaders and say, "Hey, listen, we need leaders still too, right? There's a place for followers and there's a place for leaders. But if we got nothing but followers, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
We definitely need to get some leaders out there. So, what's your main goal and everything? Yeah, I know you want to do the coaching and all that, and eventually quit your day job. But what's your actually, big vision?
Man, big vision is just to see, I want to say, I mean, the basic answer would be see men be the best version of themselves, but I think it's bigger than that because you want to see, one of the most important things to me is being a good father. And so if you see a father pour into his son and give to him, and then you get to stop that, generational trauma, the generational curses and everything like that. As a father, if you get to see, be a part of that and see your kid, see your son raised, to be emotionally healthy, emotionally intelligent, and to see them pursue what they want and have the ability to be free in the sense of not being stuck by what society or what other people tell them. You have to be this type of person. They could be themselves, and you just get to see that. That's one of the most amazing things that you could possibly see, in my opinion. And so
Absolutely.
if I can have a hand, just, a small little hand in that, then man, my life has been worth every second, every breath.
That's just saying. So you also have a podcast yourself, huh?
I do. It's called the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast. It's all about being the best version of yourself through mind, body, heart, and spirit. Um, I started that. It's funny there's just kind of what we talked about earlier. So I had a lot of limiting beliefs in what I wanted to do with when it came to that, and I was like, you know what, I'm not. Why would anybody listen to me? Like, who? Why would if I ask somebody, hey, would you be in it? Why would they say yes? Like as much as I want to do it, And so at one point, I had to do training, and this was September of last year, and so after being away from my family for 10 months, I had to be away from again for a month. I had to go
Oh,
stay in
sheesh.
OKC. And so I was there, and on the first, it was like the first Saturday, I woke up, complete silence. And I was just like, this is miserable. Like, I'm used to waking up, I hear the kids laughing or whatever they're doing. And I was like, man, this is so hard because I didn't really deal with it the first time. And here we are again for a month dealing with this. I was like, you know what? I need to focus on something like I did before, but actually follow through and really have that, something that really means something. I was like, you know what? I've wanted to do this podcast. I'm just gonna watch some videos, some more videos. I've been learning about it for so long. I'm just gonna do it. And I was like, I'm gonna hold myself accountable. I just put it on like on my social media. I'm starting a podcast. This is the date that I'm starting. This is what it's about. I'm gonna hit post. And I was like, well, now I have to do it because everybody knows we're going to do it. And if I don't do it, I'm not a man of integrity, right? So that's kind of how it started off. And so I've been blessed with so many amazing people to have on there talking about everything when it comes to mind, body, heart, and spirit. I've had a lot of men's mental health experts come on. We get to talk about men's mental health. We talk about the brain itself, the different brain chemicals we have. Habits was one of the was a more recent one that everybody seems to love. I had somebody, an amazing guest on, has a PhD in habits, and we talked for an hour just on habits. So if I can, the goal was how do I create tools and resources for people to learn just one thing a week? If they learn one thing a week, can they implement it? Can we move forward and, you know, be that best version of themselves? Can it help them get that way? And that was the whole goal behind creating that podcast.
Nice. So do you drop a episode weekly? Do you do interviews or do you sometimes do the solo thing or both?
Originally, it was my intention to like every month have a solo, but I realized how hard that is to do when you're
Yeah,
doing
buddy.
everything by yourself and have a 9 to 5. So I was like, okay, like let's just scale that back. So right now, I'm just doing interviews for the time being until I can free up some more time to do some solos. And it comes out every Monday. I have a new episode come out. I'm at episode this Monday was episode 33, I think.
Outstanding. Cool, man. That's outstanding. Now, I mean, I've been doing it for about a year and a half now myself, and I found myself like this is my therapy anymore, right? And it's amazing how much I've gotten out of podcasting just and that's I think the thing that keeps fueling me too, right? Like um eh, it's a struggle at first to kind of get yourself out there, right? Because like you said, who's gonna watch me? Why am I so interesting? Or what's who cares, right?
Yeah.
But at some point in time, you just got to go, and there's going to be this for me. It just I started off with friends and family, and just kind of just kept pushing it, and never giving up, and finding myself, wow, I really like this. It's helped me, and then hearing other people's stories, and me also giving an opportunity to talk about my experiences as well it's been the best, amount of therapy I think I've ever had, you know, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I mean, how is podcasting done for you in that way?
Yeah. One, I get to, I kind of realized how many stories I actually have that I can actually share. I'm like, oh, you know what? I do have this relatable story, like there's value there. And then on top of that, I get to sit there and I get to talk to these experts and ask them whatever I want. Like as much
Right.
as like I'm doing it for the audience, I'm also doing it for me too, selfishly. Like I want to
Sure.
be like,
Yep.
what can I learn from
Pick
you?
your
Like I'm really
brains. Yeah.
yeah. Like, oh, how do you do this? Like, oh, like that's interesting. What about this? And so like it's just this wealth of knowledge, this waterfall of knowledge that you just get to sit there and bask in and ask whoever you want, whatever you want when they say yes. And you're like, wow, like this is a lot of really good stuff. And you're sitting there taking notes. You're like, man, I need to do this and I need to do that. Like, oh, that's an interesting opinion. Cool. And you just keep going.
Yeah, that's the other part, is getting the different variety of people, all walks of life, all different things. I mean, I've got to hear, military stories, ATF, undercover agents, sheriffs, I mean, um, musicians. It's opened so many different doors, and then you get a different perspective. So I think even I gotta say, like, I've changed even a lot of the way I think in general, due to podcasting. So it's, been a amazing ride for me as well. Now, is it hard for you to get in, go out and get your guests and all that stuff, or did you kind of struggle with that at first, or did you find that kind of to be somewhat easy? How do you end up find them? I mean, do you go on? I know. I mean, like for me, I do TikTok, Facebook. So, I mean, constantly looking wherever.
So I've been focusing on LinkedIn for a really long time. And so I've kind of slowly been learning the ins and outs of LinkedIn and building my brand on LinkedIn. And so there were a lot of people, like there were a handful of people like that I had connected with. I was like, man, this would make a really, really great guest. And so after a while, I just pitched it to them. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is my mission. And when I sit there and tell them, this is what my mission is, like, oh man, I'd love to be on. Like, and it's like a lot of times it's like super easy. I'm like, oh, that was a lot easier than I
Yeah.
thought. Okay, like
Right.
I thought I'd be pulling teeth. Um, and I thought like one of the things I always were what kind of held me back at first. I was like, man, when they asked the question of what's your download rate, like what's your audience, like this and that, like I was like, man, it's not going to be a lot, you know. And fortunately, like nobody's like really like, oh, that's not good enough, like nobody said that. They're like, yeah, cool, I'll go teach and learn something, and share my story. And so a lot of the people I've gotten have been through LinkedIn, a few through Instagram, a few through just local events that I've gone through. I found a handful of people I was like that I really respect. I'm like, hey, would you want to come on here? Like, absolutely. Like, yeah, I'd love to support you and share a message. And then just like, do you have on the podcast guest.com? Like I've gotten a handful of really, really great people through that too.
Yeah, that's been I was overwhelmed at first, to be honest with you, with how many I got, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna need a scheduler after this," and so um I think I came up with a 20 something right off rip. It was just a very long list. When she gave it to me, I was just like, "Oh, okay." So then I'm like, I was not ready for this. So I ended up having to like kick out. I'm kicking out 2 episodes a week now because of it. But uh, we'll give them another shout out because I appreciate, they are awesome in terms of helping you find guests that fit your show, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other great part about it is mostly the whole list is people that actually really want to be on your show and actually be a fit to your show.
Yeah.
So I like that too as well. It's appreciated.
Yeah.
But brother, is there anything else that you would like to share with us? That we didn't maybe touch on, or any last thoughts that you would like to hit, before we head out?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered, everything. And yeah.
Outstanding. Well, hey man, I appreciate all that you do. I'll be adding your website to my website. I'll put it in veteran-owned businesses or something, or somewhere that way. It's just another place for people to go click and find you. Uh, I like to help anybody out. It's just another avenue, for you to get another click. There's nothing. I don't need anything in return. I just want to help. You get what you want to do out, man. So that way you can quit your job, bro, and make it your full time.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No, absolutely, brother. I appreciate you. And if you ever need anything and you ever want to come back on, share some more stuff, you wrote a book or something crazy, come on, over and always have a seat here, brother.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
All right, man. Well, if you don't have anything else to say, we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, see you, brother.
See ya.
All right, friends and fam. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap up another great interview. If you guys go out there, go check out Matt Findora. Let me pull up his website. All right. Go to www.mattfindora.com. Once again, that's www.mattfindora.com. And go give him a check out. And, anybody can need, we all can use some help, right? With our crazy brains up here. Well, anyways, I hope you guys have an amazing day out there. We say, don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, we'll see you guys.